If for some reason I had to pick my top 5 books of 2026 right this second, here are the books I would be choosing. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you the top 5 Romantasy books that I have read in 2026. I feel like I'm having my worst reading year in terms of quantity of what I've read, but boy am I having a great reading year in terms of the quality of the books. I have found some new god tier Romantasy reads, some new all-time favourites, and there's a couple of sequels and continuations of series on here as well. I am so excited to dive into this list and tell you about all the books that have been ranking the highest this year. But before I dive in, make sure you have subscribed if you haven't already. I'm here for you every Sunday with a video on fantasy romance, sometimes some other things as well. Hey, I have various genre dimensions to me. And also, as we're going through this list, make sure you're letting me know down in the comments what your top read of the year so far is. I was about to say no particular order, but you know what? I am actually going to rank these from 5, 4, 3, 2, and then my favourite read of the year so far right at the end. So let's dive into the books. Number 5 on this list is a book that I was very, very excited for this year, but not one that I really anticipated being on my favourite books of the year. That book is Half City by Kate Golden. I have read and loved Kate Golden's Sacred Stone series and was very excited when I saw that they had a brand new release coming out this year. Now, the reason I didn't think this was going to be within the top 5 is because this is an urban fantasy, and whilst I have read and enjoyed urban fantasy in the past, it is definitely not one of the main subgenres that I read and enjoy. I don't know, there's just something about books with sword fighting and knights and dragons that do it for me a little bit more. I was blown away. I expected this to be good. I didn't expect this to be that good. And this is actually that good. It's put me into a whole urban fantasy spin for the year. I've actually read quite a few now, and there are way more urban fantasies on the list for the rest of the year that probably would have been on there if I didn't love this one so much. One of my favourite series that actually got me into reading when I was a teenager was the Shadowhunter series. This is very nostalgic. This is kind of a mix between Buffy the Vampire Slayers and the Shadowhunter series by Cassandra Clare. It is spicy, it has an academy setting which I adore, slight dark academia element to it. It has this leather-clad, double dagger wielding female main character that I was obsessed with. I mean, seriously, look at these two. How could you possibly not enjoy this? I remember this having plenty of twists and turns to keep me on my toes the whole way through. And actually the ending of this book was kind of unexpected for me, which I'm always impressed when a Romantasy book can surprise me, just because I read so much within the genre that often I find myself being able to guess where we're going. This was good. It was seductive. It was dangerous. It was a little dark. It was in an academia setting. I loved every single thing about this. And as I said, it's definitely put me into my urban fantasy era. So leave your urban fantasy recommendations down in the comments below, because I feel like I need to read more things like this. And I think if, like me, you love Sacred Stones, I think you would like this. But for whatever reason you didn't like Sacred Stones, or you've never read that other one, this is so different that I would tell you to give this a go anyway. I am seeing so many people, this being the first book they've picked up of Kate Golden's, and being as obsessed with it as I am. I think a lot of you are going to love this if you haven't already read it. And I know I'm going to get questions. This is the beautiful Fairy Loot copy. I think it came in a February box, I want to say. It's really expensive on the secondhand market, so definitely keep an eye out in their trove sales if they do bring this back as some extra stock. Up next, we actually have a sequel of a book that I really loved last year. I can't remember if book 1 made it into my top 10 last year or not. I feel like it did. Maybe it didn't, I'm not sure. The book is Broken Dove by Danny Francis. This book has a severe case of book 1 was great, but book 2 is somehow even better. This, again, oh my god, this surprised me. It took me to places I wasn't expecting to go to. This also fits in kind of an urban fantasy space, but more specifically dystopian fantasy. The romance in this one set my heart aflame. I was along for the ride with everybody in this book. I loved all of the new characters, all of the new settings, the new threats and adventures that were kind of introduced within this one. The tensions, the betrayal, the theories that are spinning round in my mind about this world is insane, and it's really been a long time since I've sat down with a book and been like, oh my god, can you imagine if this happens? It just sent my brain reeling, and that's why I loved this so much. Full of action, super easy to read, definitely better than book 1, and I rated book 1 really highly. I think I gave book 1 5 stars or 4.5 stars. Somehow this was better than a 5-star read. I don't really know what was in this that made it so addictive. More than anything else, I am so geared up after reading this one to dive into book 3. Book 3 is either going to be the best final book in a series I've ever read, or I'm going to be heartbroken. There's no in between. It just, I think, is going to be spectacular. The setup that we get in this book for the final one, I think this is a trilogy, correct me if I'm wrong, is so well done. And also I liked how this balanced with some humour, so even though this is quite a dark world, there are some very kind of gritty and even at times really gory situations. We have lots of violence. We have lots of conflict within this story. There is also moments of found family and friendship and healing and lightness. The whole thing with this Who Stole This Bloke's Chocolate Cake had me cackling the whole way through, and then even that broke my heart. Like, oh. If you haven't read Broken Dove yet and you read Silver Elite, I don't know what you're doing, and if you haven't started this, in my opinion, you absolutely should be doing. Up next is actually the book I've just finished, and again, this one is a sequel. Book 1 definitely made it into my top 3, I think, of 2025. Book 1 was a book that I loved. It felt unlike anything I was reading in the romantasy space at the time. I'll tell you a bit more about what I love about it in a second. But I don't know why I didn't read this before, like, as it was coming out. I've had a little delay. Why had I not read this? The book is Rights of the Starling by Devney Perry. This does so many things well, like it did in book 1. If you've never read this series, some of my favourite things about it, I love how big the world feels. I love the conflicts and the politics and the kind of agreements between the 5 main kingdoms in this. But above anything else, I love the monsters, the depictions of animals and mythical creatures, monstrous beings, the fear and the control that these animals that, like, often we have humans as the villains, and like humans still may ultimately be the villain in this one, but humans can be predictable or they can be bought, for example. They can be persuaded. The animals in this world are cutthroat, they are deadly, and they have one thing in their mind, and that is just to kill and cause destruction, and they're like, they cannot be reasoned with. Like, it just makes for such a fearful, page-turning fantasy read. I was like, oh my god, what's going to happen? Is this wolf going to rip somebody's head off? Like, I could not put the first book down. Certainly got that in book 2 as well. Now, I will say, even though I rated this really highly, and obviously I'm putting it third of my books of the year so far, I believe the beginning of this book was a little slower than maybe it needed to be. This book does something that I think is very, very rare, especially in the romantasy genre, and that is kind of, in the second book, it has introduced such a vast world, new conflict, new characters, new concepts and prophecies and theories in my brain, like just so much newness, and it has really made the series go from feeling like relatively contained to the world feeling so vast and so crazy. And there's so many elements within book 2 that I couldn't have even predicted would be a part of this story when I read book 1. The fact that this has expanded that world and that story so significantly, I think should really be commended. But because of that, there is quite a lot of ground laying, there's quite a lot of exposition, there's quite a lot of detail. I think particularly in that first 40%. I certainly read the first 40% of this book a lot slower than the rest of it. I do think that first 40% is necessary. I don't think it's filler by any stretch of the imagination. But just a pre-warning, if you're going into this and expecting to jump straight into the action of the back of book 1, this does feel for a second a little bit slower. We get a new POV introduced in this book that takes up, I want to say, like 40 to 50% of the time we have in this book is with a new POV. And I've been reflecting with a friend who's also read this. A lot of our theories are the same. A lot of our theories conflict each other. I haven't theorized like this about a book since I first read like Throne of Glass and A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I was like predicting everything that was going to happen and my brain was going wild. And I'm so happy that I found a book that has brought me back into that space of feeling so connected to these characters and so connected to this world that I want to know what's happening next. I want to guess. I want to see all the little clues and details that the author has left us in this text to kind of figure out what's happening. And I just have a feeling that no matter what I guessed, I would be wrong. Like, Devney Perry is keeping me on my toes with this series. This is so underrated if you ask me. Shield of Sparrows is one of my god-tier romantasy reads. It's even more cemented on that list now that I've read book 2, Rights of the Starling. Book 3 has just been announced. Seven and the Swift. Immediately I've pre-ordered that because duh. I really, really hope this is not the last romantasy that Devney Perry writes. I've read some of her small town contemporary suspense romance and really enjoyed that, but I think Devney Perry does fantasy romance so well, and I need book 3 immediately. Penguin Michael Joseph, if you're seeing this, or Devney, hi Devney, how you doing Devney? If you happen to have like a manuscript of book 3, I will happily read that right now. I will drop everything. This has such a hold on my brain at the moment. I can't stop thinking about it. This next section is where it's going to get slightly controversial, because this next book I have said is my book of the year, and I've been saying this since about, I think I read it in February. The book is Starside by Alex Aster. Bear with me. This is still phenomenal. This is the first book I've ever read from Alex Aster, and I still love this deep down to my core. This was so exciting to me. It was like something in Romantasy that I hadn't really read in a while, and that is like that true enemies to lovers. They are still enemies. You get to the end of book 1, the enemies are enemizing, okay? It's like enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers to enemies. Like, I could not keep up with this too in a way that was really exciting and really drove the story forward. When I first spoke about this, I talked about how it had some of my favourite kind of tropes or plot devices in it. So things like that deadly competition, that deadly trials. Almost feels Hunger Games-esque, so I don't know if it's just a nostalgic kick for me. But the other thing I loved about this that I felt very similar with Shield of Sparrows was that world building, was that threat of like creatures or the unknown, or in this one there's some monsters as well, and that made for a really exhilarating read. So I still really love this one. I haven't reduced my rating for this at all. I just happened to have read something that I think tickles my specific brain a little bit more, but it took me a week or two to look at both books and be like, oh my god, is it beating Starside? It has, but this is still such a like positive experience for me. I loved reading this book. I'm very excited for Stormside. That's definitely on my list of pre-orders already. And I think this is another one that's great as well if you either are new to Romantasy or if you're a more seasoned Romantasy reader. I really think this has something in it for everybody. I think it's very accessible, it's very entertaining, it's very addictive. Like, just, this is vibey as anything. Like, the vibes in this, super great. The other element of this for me, I haven't really spoke about with any of the other books, was actually the magic system. This idea that magic isn't inherited, you don't just get it passed down to you. The magic is tied very specifically to these swords in the world that you have to claim, and somebody up there has to decide if you're worthy of that sword. Seeing Aris go through this world and being surrounded by kind of nobles and very skilled warriors, and the idea of kind of the worth of the female main character in this and like what that's tied to, and the fact that people try and take that away, was really empowering to read. I loved Aris, our main character, and her story. The world was great, the creatures were great, the romance was great. Can I really call it romance? There is a romantic element. I can see the romance dialing up in future books. This is a slow burn enemies to lovers, so even though we do have some action in this first book in that romance sphere, I can see that being dialed up significantly. I know Alex has got more in store for us with this one. The other thing I loved about this book was the ending. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you about the ending, but oh my god, the ending has just driven me. I'm just like, where is book 2? Alex, where is... She's wrote it so quickly. I imagine she had the same reaction when she got to the end, and she was like, great, book 2 immediately. I'm going to start writing it, 'cause we all need to know what happens next, probably Alex included. So I still love this one. I still highly recommend it. I know some of you are going to be a little bit sad that this is no longer my book of the year, but it is still, it's second. It's up there. This is phenomenal. One of the best things I have read all year, and so juicy and so good. And last but not least, the book that is currently sat in my top spot for my book of the year. This is not technically out yet. I think at the time that you're watching this, it will be out a few weeks after I upload. This is so good. This is one of those books that I'm going to need every single copy of. It's my book of the year. I feel pretty confident about that. I don't think I'm going to read anything else that's going to do it for me like this book did. I'm so excited that when this book comes out, so many more people are going to get to experience this story. The book is Steelborn by Taylor J. LaRue. I don't know if just like me and the people at Wayward are on the exact same wavelength, but every book that's come out from Wayward I have devoured and loved. This tops every single one of them. This is actually not just my favourite book of the year. I think this has become one of my favourite books ever. Like, this is up there with like Throne of Glass and A Study in Drowning and like Blood Over Brighthaven. This is in my top favourite books ever. Easily a god tier recommendation from me. I read this recently and I'm still struggling. I think this is how I know I love it so much. I'm still struggling to put into words what was so fantastic about this. I mean, I could wax lyrical about how the two main characters were fantastic. I enjoyed the depth of our female main character particularly. I enjoyed the threat. I enjoyed the adventure element of this. I feel sometimes with fantasy, I don't necessarily get that let's go on an adventure vibe, and that definitely had this. You know, there was swashbuckling and krakens and horseback riding, and they're on a ship and they've got to be running up the sails. Like, there was a real element of doing and going, and there was a time limit, and it just really, I felt urgent with them. I feel like I was running around the decks of this ship like I don't know any ship language. But on the starboard side, is that a ship reference? I was doing ship things on the ship with them, okay? I don't know how ships work. I'm not a pirate. But I kind of want to be now. I loved the characters in this, and I feel like we have just scratched the surface. Not even just our two main characters. Something I really enjoyed within this was the cast of side characters, particularly that last 20%. We really get introduced to so many new characters. I think are just going to have such a fantastic involvement in the plot, but such a fantastic character arc for the rest of the series. If this book was going to be 30 books long, like the series, I would read all 30 books and I would be thankful for it. This had romance that was almost reluctant, but like, at different times for different people involved in that romance and for different reasons. I loved the depiction of the world. I could almost like smell the rain on these cobbled streets, and I could almost see the view from her apartment that was in this really nice district and like flowers. Like I felt like I was in this world. There is something about the writing style that just drew me right in. There's still a lot of like mystery things that are still to be uncovered, particularly with the magic system. This magic system was super intriguing. Like the setup was done really well in book 1, but I'm really excited for how the author's going to push that and test that in book 2. I can definitely see there's some like breaking of barriers and molds coming in the future, and I'm so excited to get into that with our characters. I even loved like the bad guy, and I enjoyed the way that like the villains of this story were dealt with. I also really love the fact that I can't at this point really tell who the big bad villain is going to be. Like I have a feeling something is going to come out of the woodwork later into book 2 or book 3 and just absolutely ruin my entire life. I finished this, and I actually filmed a video on this. I do have a short review that I'll upload as well of just this book. I finished this and felt physically ill. Like I sat there for 10 minutes and my stomach was like roiling with emotions, and I was like, I don't even know how to, I still can't put into words how good this was. And I know I felt like that after Starside, and after a few months I've been able to like put my thoughts into like understandable review. For now, you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. This is out in August. It's really not that far away. I really think this is going to be a huge Romantasy release this year. I think it's going to be many people's favourites. I've already got a couple of my friends to start reading this or finish reading it. My friend Rosie read it really quick actually, and she was like, Becca, Steelborn. I was like, I know. I know. This is a debut as well, I think, which terrifies me. I cannot wait to see what Taylor J. LaRue does next, not just with this series, but whatever else they might write as well. Taylor J. LaRue has somehow in one book become an auto-by-author for me. I will be pre-ordering this author's entire list in the future. And that's everything I've got to say on these 5 books for the moment. Every single one of them is great, and I would really recommend it, particularly if you resonated with any of the things I said about any of them specifically. Usually at the end of the year, I do a wrap up of my top 10 reads of 2026, so it might be that every single one of these makes it into that top 10. Might be that I have an absolute storm of the next 6 months, and I'm just reading and reading and reading, and so many incredible books fly at me that none of these make it in. Cannot personally see that for any of them really, but who knows, it could happen. I do want to give a shout out to some honourable mentions as well that I have really enjoyed that didn't quite make this list. Very specifically, let's mention 2. One of them is Daggermouth by H.M. Wolf. I really loved this. I just happened to have read it around a lot of these other really strong options, and for me, whilst I love Daggermouth a lot, it was fantastic. It was really fast paced. I think there's more to come for that story, and I don't think I got enough in book 1 to like solidify it as a favourite of the year, but it is a series that I'm very invested in, and I think book 2 particularly is going to be insane. So I'm looking forward to Python coming out. And the other book, and this book was always at a disadvantage, so the fact that I think of this book so positively is a win in itself. The book is We Who Will Die by Stasia Stark. I love this. I did really enjoy this. This was actually originally in my top 5, and then I've recently read Steelborn and things have shuffled recently, but the only reason I think this is slightly lower down, and this is not the book's fault, this is my own personal reflections on things. I, for some reason, really struggle with fantasy that has got inspirations from ancient Rome or ancient Greece, like that kind of Greco-Roman influence. Even to the point where there's authors that I love that are auto-by-authors for me that have wrote within that space, and I haven't enjoyed the book. Like Adrian Young's Fallen City was really not for me, even though I have loved absolutely everything else Adrian Young has written. So this has a bit of that, and it has a bit of that Gladiator-esque. I don't know why my brain doesn't quite like it. It's just something that I'm not particularly interested or driven by in a book. So the fact that this is even a notable mention with that as a big element is a win for this book. It was really strong. It does have the kind of ancient Rome gladiator thing working against it slightly. Before I go, I would love to know in the comments what your top 5 or just top 1 book of the year is so far. So make sure you're leaving me a comment before you go telling me which that is. And if you've made it to the end of this video, leave me a rain cloud emoji in the comments because I'm looking outside and it looks like it's about to storm. But other than that, I will see you in the next one.